Hello, crypto world. Welcome to the Chart Historian. My name is Justin, and on this channel, I delve deep into crypto charts, exploring chart structures, fractals, and patterns. This is going to be an XRP video. We've had some exciting action on the XRP chart. Price has made it above the all-time high, or now it's the previous all-time high. So in this video, what I want to do is I want to ask an important question that I don't really see many people asking, and that is, where are we in the bull run structure? So to simplify it, are we here or are we here? And as you can imagine, the answer is going to have big ramifications on price movement. So to answer that question, we need to understand what is taking place over here. If we can solve the mystery of what this is, then we will know where we are and what we could potentially expect coming down the pike. I'm going to end this video with a look at the bigger picture, and that is the stock market, because it's all tied together. So let's dive in and get started. So if we are here, that means we have completed something similar to this over here. If we are here, that means we didn't do something like this. Now, I've briefly touched on this in my last XRP video, but I'm going to look at this in a much more methodical way. So the first step in understanding the XRP chart is you have to understand XRP has a repetitive macro structure. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So in the repetitive macro structure that XRP has, we have essentially three different parts of the chart. We have a bull run where price moves up aggressively. We have a decline that comes after the bull run and price falls aggressively. And then we have a range-bound time in between the decline and the next bull run. As you can see, these structures repeat over and over again. So we have another bull run here, a decline, and a range-bound time. We currently have been in a bull run. We can look over here. We have a smaller iteration of this, a bull run, a decline, and a sideways range-bound time. We can even go further back in time, all the way to the very beginning of the chart, and we'll see the same thing. Range-bound times, bull runs, declines. This repetitive structure repeats over and over again. So just understanding that XRP has these seasons, bull runs, declines, and range-bound times, actually goes a long way in clearing up a lot of the confusion that plagues the XRP community, knowing where we are, what we're doing. Throughout this entire time, we were looking forward to a bull run. The very fact that we thought this was a bull run testifies to the fact that we don't understand as a community what this chart does. There's a more methodical way to view this, though, and before we start analyzing what could potentially be going on here, it's crucial that you understand the nuances of this chart. Okay, so this is a more nuanced look at this chart, and it's a little confusing, at least zoomed out like this, but we can examine these range-bound times from this distance. These black boxes are that range-bound time. I divide it into three separate fractals, and within each fractal there's sub-fractals. So for instance, in box 1 or fractal 1, there are substructures, part A and part B. So in part A, price moves up and it moves back down again, and then in part B it goes flat. In fractal 2, we have three waves, wave A, wave B, and wave C. In fractal 3, price moves up to a peak, which is part A. It then crashes or declines, which is part B. It then recovers, does a smaller correction, and goes into the bull run. We see these sequence of events repeat in the next range-bound time. So for instance, in fractal 1, we have part A where price moves up and moves back down, and then we have part B where it goes flat. In fractal 2, we have the three waves, wave A, wave B, and wave C, and notice how large this C wave is compared to this C wave. That's because when a structure repeats, the timing, height, and depth, those do not repeat. Those will be original to the new iteration, which allows for novelty in the way it repeats. When this happened, this was the ruling. A lot of people thought it was the bull run starting, but if you followed this type of analysis, you would understand that there is no way in heck that this was going to be a bull run, because we were only in the second box or fractal of 3 fractals that make up the sideways range-bound time. And of course, fractal 3, price moved up to a peak, which was part A, then declined, which was part B, and then it recovered, did a smaller correction, and then went into the bull run. So we see that within these bigger structures, there are substructures. So we need to understand these structures because they may exist on today's chart. Notice also how I approached this. I approached it in a very methodical way. That's the same way we need to approach what's taking place on today's chart. We can't just grab a large fractal and just apply the whole thing and just say in a holistic way it matches. There is another part that you need to get familiar with is this declining structure. Now, it's kind of difficult to see on this level, but we can go over to CoinTrader Pro and examine these structures on a smaller time frame. CoinTrader Pro allows me to go back in time on a small time frame, which I can't really do a trading view. But before we jump over there, it's important to note how these structures play out on different scales. So these are clearly very large time frames, whereas this, the same thing happens, it just happens in a very small time frame, which opens the door that we potentially could have repeated a decline and a range-bound time in this area, which would mean that we potentially are at the beginning of a new bull run. But before we come to any conclusion, we need to understand what the declining structures do. So let's jump over to CoinTrader Pro. Okay, so here we are at the very first bull run. So this takes place in November/December 2013, and I'm on an hour candle. So this is the bull run, and immediately after the bull run, we go into the decline. Now, this is the first structure, A. On a day candle, many times you can't even see this. On an hour candle, you can. So it essentially moves up and drops intensely. These first structures many times can be very intense, like this first drop. In B, it's essentially a wave, but you can actually try to break it apart into subsections. So you have this first part, and then you have this move up and the decline, which would be the second part. C is another wave, and you could probably do the same thing. You have this first part and then this second part. This first part is the move up, and then the second part is more of a decline. In D, so D is interesting. It has this unique characteristic of a move up, a drop, and then it goes flat and then moves up again. It doesn't always go flat, but that move up and drop, it essentially creates a bowl structure, and then you have the decline. So in E, now the closer you get to the end of this decline, typically the longer these structures take to play out. Let's see if we can get a little more breadth in here. Okay, so E is essentially a bounce, and then F. So F can play out differently. Sometimes it's more vertical, but it's essentially kind of the landing of the entire decline. It's where the decline terminates. It's the end of the decline. This structure will be repeated in different kind of iterations. All of them will be. They have unique characteristics, some of them more than others, and when they repeat, they'll repeat uniquely in a kind of a unique manner, but they will still harken back to the original kind of DNA of the structure. Okay, so now that we have a basic understanding of these structures, let's jump over to today's chart and take some of these iterations of the past of these declining structures and see if we can find a decline that has taken place. It's important to understand the decline comes first and then the range-bound time. So if we can find a complete declining set of fractals, then we can move on to the range-bound fractals. Okay, so here we are on today's chart. I'm back on TradingView. This is the ending of the range-bound time, so price starts moving up aggressively, comes to the first corrective structure. This 3 set of corrections takes place in all XRP bull runs. I've discussed this in many of my more recent videos. The second corrective structure has 2 parts to it. The first correction then it moves up and it has a second correction. Either of these corrections can be the larger of the two. The third corrective structure, after price gets above the high of the second corrective structure, it rockets up, comes to a peak, and then goes into a third corrective structure. Eventually it bottoms out and it starts moving up towards the peak. Once it gets above the high of the third corrective structure, you have 7 different steps that brings it to the peak. I've discussed this 7-step move in many other videos. You can watch this one right here where I deep dive into the 7 moves to the peak, and you can learn the rules of the road, if you will. So if this was the peak, and by the way, we do have 7 moves on this move up. So if this is the peak, then we should potentially have a decline, because immediately after the peak structure, it goes into the decline. Okay, now we're going to have to define what the peak structure is. Here we are zoomed in, and since we're zoomed in this far, we might as well count the moves to the peak. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, which is the peak. After the peak, it moves down in the initial peak structure, and then there's 2 smaller peaks. These are really sloppy iterations, but you can make out 2 potential peaks here. So you have the one right here, and then you have the other right here. Notice how it moves up, pulls back, and then kind of does this bounce. The same idea repeats. Moves up, moves down, and then you have this bounce, which then declines. Okay, so that would be the peak structure. So if we have a declining structure, I'm going to put some boxes on here, and we should be able to take fractals from previous declining structures. So what I mean by that is we can go through history, grab different A structure fractals, copy and paste them onto here, and see if they indeed match the basic profile. So let's put some boxes on and examine these boxes with fractals from the past. Okay, so here are some boxes, and this is the way I believe it breaks up, and you get a rare view into my side panel here. So this first fractal, fractal A, if this is indeed fractal A, we should potentially have some of these. And so I have different fractals down here from different times in history where the fractal A was printed. So what we can do is we can start with the first one, bam. And I would say, let's zoom in here. I would say this does look like what fractal A does. Today's chart matches what this fractal does. Let's take this one off and put the second time in 2014/15. So yes, I would say so far so good. And let's do the third one. So this is 2021. This one's a little different, but it does what it should do. It kind of moves up and then drops. So I would say that fractal A does match, or box A does match the different fractals from previous A structures. Okay, well, let's do B. So here is B. Let's start with the first one. So I would say, yeah, it's the basic concept. You have this first part here, which would be this part of the fractal, and then the move up on the fractal and the decline. You have the move up and the decline on the chart. Let's take a look at a few other ones. This one, it's a little different, but it essentially is a wave or a bounce. That was, by the way, from 2015. Here's one from 2017. This is the third iteration of this, and it looks different today, or potentially looks different, but you still have an echo of, so on the fractal you have this part, which would be maybe this part, just played out much longer, and then you have the move up and the decline. The decline matches quite nicely with today's decline, or it has a lot of commonality, put it that way. Fractal B from 2018, this is the fourth iteration of this structure, and you can see how it starts high, drops, and then does this wave, which you see reflected on today's chart. And then finally 2015, that must be 2020, because it's the fifth iteration. Yeah, that's my mistake. 2021. So again, it has this first part, which I would say maybe is this part, and then the declining part. So I would say B does match previous iterations of B. So far, it's looking like we do have a potential decline in the works. Okay, C. So let's examine the first iteration of C, and yeah, it does. So you have this first part, which in today's chart was really high, quite the peak, and then you have this next wave, which is the decline. Here's a more kind of clearer version, one that matches better to what today's chart is doing. Let's make this kind of quick. This is the 2017. This is the third iteration of this fractal. 2018, this is the fourth iteration of this fractal, and commonality. And then 2021, a little different, but yeah, still kind of two different parts, this part on the fractal and this part, which we have two different parts on today's chart as well. Okay, so that's C. Let's move along to D. Now, this is where we run into trouble. I'm going to zoom out. I'm on an hour candle. I'm going to go to a 3-hour candle. And so this is the first iteration of D, and it goes way off the chart. But you can see that it was potentially following it until, whoops, what is going on? No. That doesn't comport to what this fractal should do. Okay, let's see. 2015, this is the second iteration. It follows the basic concept. By the way, this is the one with the bowl. Nope. Let's do the next one, 2017. And basic kind of profile, but what the heck is that? Okay, 2018. This one actually is a fairly close match. This is the fourth iteration, but whoa, goes way off. And what is going on here? So clearly something happened that does not comport to what fractal D should do in a decline. In fact, it's just like a clean break. There has never been a time in history where in fractal D you make a new all-time high. So, but what we could see is that everything else did match, which is really interesting. Okay, now we're going to have to step back and analyze this. So what we have here is we have a potential decline that is broken. So we did not complete the decline. This is really important to understand. If we have not completed the decline, that means we did not even begin on the range-bound time, which has to come before the next bull run. So between bull runs, let's zoom out. So between bull runs, you have a bull run here, you have a decline and a range-bound time. It's important to understand that the decline and the range-bound time is the reset before the next bull run. It has to happen. It always has to happen. It never has not happened. So we do not have a complete decline. So that tells us we're likely in a bull run still. And that's because we haven't completed any potential declining structure. This is really important, folks. Okay, so if we are in a bull run, how does that make any sense? This massive consolidation. Okay, so down here, as many analysts today present this, whereas this is the first part of the bull run, it has this consolidation, and then it has the second part of the bull run. But I'm saying that this is a decline and a range-bound time, and I've compared the decline. Some of these fractals came from here, by the way. They partially matched, but once it got to here, it broke. So that rules out this possibility, this structure. That rules out this kind of reset in between two bull runs. What that means is that we are somewhere in the bull run structure. But where? Okay, let's jump back to this bull run on a small time frame. Okay, so here we are on a 3-hour candle, and once again we have the 3 corrective structures. So we only have one option, folks. We have the first corrective structure complete. We have the second corrective structure complete. The only possibility is that this entire structure has been the third corrective structure. It's the only possibility, people. But can we confirm that this is indeed a bull run structure? In fact, we can. We could take this second corrective structure, copy and paste it onto today's chart. Of course, I matched it for the timing, height, and depth, but as you can see, it accounts for all the parts of this structure. Now, I started it from the peak here, as I pointed out in my other video. That's because it starts from the peak here. So I'm comparing apples to apples, bull run structure to bull run structure. The timing of this is a little different. This decline took much longer, but it was a decline. And after the decline, we get the move up, just like the fractal suggests. Now, this move up is probably going to be similar to what the fractal suggests, but it's going to be different because once you get above the high of this corrective structure, it goes in a series of moves, 7 moves to the peak, and this on a smaller time frame does not have that. But to be fair, this move up is not to the peak. It's only to here. So this move up could potentially resemble this fractal, but it's probably also going to be unique. Okay, so what does that mean? If this is the third corrective structure, where does that put us in kind of relation to historical bull runs? So this is the 2017/2018 bull run structure. Here's the third corrective structure. As you can see, it's near the peak. So what we're missing is the blow off top, folks. That is where we are in the big picture. If we were starting here, it would mean we would still have all of this to go. But as I have shown in a logical, methodical method using fractal analysis, that we are not here. We are here. We're just moving out of this. So let's jump back to today's chart. Okay, so here we are in today's chart. I'm on an hour candle, and this green line is the all-time high that we just got above. So us getting above this all-time high begins the 7-count watch, if you will, to the peak. It is my belief that this move up is the first one right here, and then this pullback is the second one. So if this continues to play out the way I believe it is, we will continue to move up and continue to work on the 7 moves to the peak. Now, there are rules, and in that video I suggested I talk about some of the rules that you need to be aware of. This, I believe, is kind of a large pullback, but you can get large ones in this overall structure. So that is where I believe we are at right now. We are really kind of going into the blow-off top of the XRP bull run structure. Now, this actually makes sense when you examine the bigger picture. Okay, so this is a look at the bigger picture. So crypto exists within a universe where there are larger, more powerful bodies that influence crypto. So when the Dow Jones and all the other indexes are doing things that are favorable to crypto, crypto comes to life. When the Dow Jones, conversely, is not doing things that are favorable to crypto, crypto goes into its bearish structures. So this is a fractal that was taken from this box, which is from December 2018 to March 2020. It's a move up to a peak and then a crash. This crash is the C19 crash. So I basically took this structure, matched it to the timing, height, and depth that comes after this box, and this is what we get. So this little tiny box is this black fractal. Now, this is on a smaller time frame. And the reason why I do that is it can allow us to track where we are in the structure. So it's my belief we are currently working on this final peak, and then once it's complete, something big is going to happen, something that has likely not happened in our lifetimes. It's a large decline. Before we examine this, let's look at a few of the other indexes. So this is the S&P 500. Again, take the same time frame, do the same thing, and this is what we get. This is the NASDAQ. Again, same time frame, do the exact same thing. This is what we get. This is the Russell 2000, and once again, Same time frame, December 2018 to March 2020. Do the same thing, and this is what we get. Folks, we have a potential large decline that is most likely going to hit soon. Let's jump back to the Dow Jones and examine the final peak. Okay, so this is the Dow Jones on an hour candle, and as you can see, it has been following the basic idea. Now, in my last video, I thought it was potentially playing out on a smaller time frame, but as it's continued to evolve and play out, it is my belief that we are doing something like this. So we don't have much time. We are working most likely on this part of the fractal. Now, there could be some differences. For instance, this move up, I don't know if it's just going to be this. It could potentially push up higher. I don't know. But this is kind of the time frame that crypto has to do its thing. Once the decline begins, we should not expect crypto to continue its bull run. Now, I don't know if I've stretched this fractal to the exact right place. This is somewhere end of August, early September. Maybe that's the time frame. I don't know. What I do know is that so far it's looking like we have a small time frame left. That window that I've talked about in previous videos is closing. It makes sense that XRP is nearing its blow-off top. And by the way, I think there is still room, even with this, for other cryptos to have their bull runs with the remaining time left. But the window is closing. So this is the S&P 500. Again, just copy and paste everything I just said about the Dow to this structure. Again, window is closing. Let's take a look at the NASDAQ. So here is the NASDAQ. Again, window is closing. How all of this comes together is yet to be seen, but most likely all these indexes are moving in unison. Let's look at the Russell 2000. So here is the Russell 2000, and once again, the window is closing. Now, maybe this peak will be greater than what this fractal suggests. I don't know. Time will tell. But what I do know is that time is short, folks. We don't have too much time. Let's jump back to the XRP chart. Okay, so here we are at the XRP chart, and we are, once again, nearing the peak of the bull run structure. As I've shown you, with the indexes, we don't have much time. It makes sense that we're in this phase of the XRP bull run. We're missing the blow off top. Now, how high this goes, I don't know. I'm not going to make a claim. There are other analysts that are great at that. I am just showing you structurally what we have completed and what we have left to go. Whether it's XRP or whatever other crypto you are following, we have a small window of time. I believe some of these smaller coins, they tend to move fast and furious when they move, so I think there's still time for them to have their moment in the sun. So don't panic, but just be aware of where we are and the big picture of things. This is a moment in time where you should be aware of where we are at and discern the signs of the times. Let's remove this. Folks, I hope I made a clear enough case presenting why I believe we are nearing the end of the XRP bull run. If you did find this video helpful, it'd be much appreciated if you hit that thumbs up button. And by the way, this is a really important point. This is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. You really need to stand on your own convictions, do your own research. I'm just showing you XRP through the eyes of someone that does chart structure analysis. And by the way, for those of you who are interested, I have a Discord. It's connected to my Patreon. I'll put a link to my Patreon in the description of this video. I am going to be counting these moves as they play out on my Discord. You're welcome to join. It's a $5 a month subscription. I'm so glad you caught this video. I hope you catch my next one. Have a great day, and bye for now.